Today I'm putting together the roof for the Gallardo. The roof is made up of a bunch of sub-assemblies, like this one here, and those sub-assemblies all get put together onto the model like this to make up the roof structure. And then there's like a bunch of little finishing bits and pieces to make it all look really nice. Let's get started. So I won't show you too much footage of me cutting out pieces, because it's kind of boring. There's a whole bunch of pieces that make up the roof, and I've cut them all out already, so let's just get started with gluing things together. So the first pieces to glue together is the two main pillar structures. The pillars run from like the top of the front guards all the way over the top of the roof to the rear of the car. And they're made up of about like 4 separate pieces. 3 of them just glue together kind of in big flat sections like this. I'm just gluing them together with PVA glue, making sure they're kind of aligned nicely as I go, just eyeing it up. Weighing it down with books as I go so they dry nice and flat. And the last piece that makes up each pillar sub-assembly like this is just kind of a strip of cardboard that kind of presses into the foam board, and then there's just like a few tabs that fold down like that. Next piece to assemble is this windscreen surround and windscreen piece. Put a bit of super glue at the top and the bottom, then lay the windscreen over the top. I've cut the windscreen out of clear plastic sheets, just this thin plastic stuff called acetate. It's great for windows and models. It's just easy to cut and it's pretty easy to get hold of and cheap. Just lay book over the top to keep it flat while it dries, of course, as usual. And then once it's dry, there's just a piece of paper that goes over the bottom like that. It's like the lower windscreen valance area. And that just nicely covers the kind of part where I previously put the glue. So this is the very top of the roof. I start by putting a piece of body coloured paper just along the rear edge, the very rear edge. I just use PVA glue, and I get a little roller and just give it a good roll, make sure it dries nice and smooth and flat. And then to give it a bit of thickness, I add this strip of 5mm thick foam core board underneath as well. Again, just using PVA glue. Position it carefully, press it down and hold it for a couple of minutes and make sure it dries nice and flat. Now the roof of a Gallardo isn't flat like this piece of cardboard, it's curved. So to get the curve that I want, I find that I can just roll the piece of cardboard on top of a spray can like this, backwards and forwards, for about like 10 minutes, just moving it around, keeping it constantly bent as I go. And after about 10 minutes you end up with something like that, so it's just nice and curved, ready to be put onto the car. So this is the outer bodywork for the C-pillars. The C-pillars run from the top of the roof down towards the back end of the car, kind of either side of the engine bay. And for reasons I won't go into here, I found that like making some of the tabs on a separate piece glued to the back of the bodywork, it just made like a neater edge later on when it's joined onto the rest of the car. And also there's like a separate piece of cardboard that glues onto that side of it like this, and that just gives it some strength when it's folded up and again joined onto the rest of the car. Once it's dry, I can just fold down the big fold line that goes down the middle of this piece. Just fold it up by hand. That should make a pretty neat kind of fold line. And then there's a little tab at the front like that, fold that under and fold up the tabs on that separate little piece that I glued just a second ago on the underside. Just fold all those up. Cool, they'll get glued onto the top of the rear side window later. And so yeah, that's ready to go into the car. Next I need to glue the side windows onto these pieces. This is where one of the rear side windows joins onto, so I just put like a really thin little bead of super glue right around the very edge. Later on they'll get covered with some trim pieces and you won't see those kind of gluey edge bits, but for now I'll just put a little bit of glue. Again, the windows are just made out of that thin plastic acetate stuff. Just position it carefully, drop it on, and then the lower edge of this rear window part has a little trim piece just to cover up where I'd previously glued the window onto, so it looks nice and neat. And this is the front side window. Again, just put a bit of glue around the edges, just like that, really carefully. Drop on the front side window, making sure it's positioned and aligned correctly. That's probably the hardest thing, just making sure when you're gluing something on, it's just like aligned properly. and where you want it to be. A couple of trim pieces to finish it, and that's the front window done. Now I'm ready to put all the parts that I've just been gluing together actually onto the car and do the final construction. So these are the main big pillar pieces that run from the front to the back of the car. There's two of those obviously, one for the passenger side, one for the driver's side. They just sit in place with various tabs and slots that I've built into the pieces that I've designed. That's just, there's a couple of tabs that go into the rear frame like that, just push them into place. There's a tab at the top, kind of the back of the passenger compartment firewall. Tab that glues onto that, hold it in place. Some PVA glue, and then another one at the front A-pillar. There are some structural support pieces that go from one side of the roof to the other. And what they do is they just give like strength and shape to the roof. So I'll start at the front. This one here will provide support for the top of the windscreen when the windscreen goes in place. I just put a little bit of glue on the tab on each side, make sure it's aligned properly and just sit it in place. And then I do the same thing for the other three that go across the top of the roof.
See you on the other side. Stay alive.
Next I need to add a couple of pieces to this area here. The front part of this is where the rear window will get glued onto, and the back part that I'm pressing into the rear frame now, this is where the rear 3/4 panel will sit up against and give it something to join onto. So that just sits in there with some little tabs, and at the front it joins onto the strip that runs around the top of the roof. Mostly it's just sitting in there with the tabs. And then there's a little piece that just pushes into place, and that helps to give the C-pillar body panel some shape and hold it all together and give it some strength. Now I can introduce the windscreen assembly that I put together earlier. So there's a little bit of tricky work just kind of getting the bottom part to sit in the right place under the kind of edges of the front fenders, just making sure it all lines up properly. There's a couple of tabs that you can't actually see that are folded under right at the bottom with a bit of glue. So I just make sure it's all aligned, press it down, hold it for a few minutes until it's dry, and that'll be the bottom of the windscreen, and kind of lower windscreen Valence area, ready to rock and roll. Once that's dried, there's a couple of tabs just under the windscreen at the front on each side. So that's one side that I've glued and dried, and I just do the same thing with the other side, and that should just sit down nice, and just hold it until it's dry. And then you just need to put a bit of super glue around the top of the windscreen. I do like half the windscreen at a time. It's just easier to hold it if you don't do the whole top of the windscreen at once. If you use this quick drying super glue, you can just put a bit on, hold it for a couple of minutes, and it's done. Next I can put the very top of the roof on, so put a bit of glue on each of those cross support pieces that I added just a couple of minutes ago. It's a little bit too much glue, so I can get a bit of tissue paper and just smooth it out, remove some of the excess glue, make a really nice, good amount of area for this piece that I'm putting on to attach to. Again, you just got to line it up carefully, make sure it's in the right spot, and then just press and hold it for a couple of minutes until it starts to dry. Great, so now I can add the body colour piece to the very top of the roof. I just put a very thin bead of glue right at the back, smooth it out, line up the roof panel at the back, really carefully just lay it down in place, give it a gentle roll just to make sure it's even and smooth and flat. And let's do the same with the front edge of the roof. Thin bead of glue, even it out, make sure it's smooth, and then just sit it down, and it's done. Now I can add the outer bodywork for the C pillars. There's a slot right at the back there that just kind of pushes into the rear frame. Then make sure the front's aligned. Looks good. Now I'm putting glue on the tabs that run around the top of the rear side window. Just put a bit of glue on each, a bit of PVA. And then I fold the bodywork, or I just curve it around, and those tabs fold under and just get hidden. You can't see them anymore. And they just make a really nice edge for the bodywork that run around the top of the windows. And then once that's dry, just put a bit of glue around the bottom tabs as well and glue all those down nice and flat. And that should finish off that rear C-pillar bodywork. And I do the same with the other side. Just fit that rear tab in first. Go around, put the glue on the tabs that run around the top of the rear side window. Fold the bodywork around. You can see that that bodywork gets a really nice curve in it now and starts to make that distinctive Gallardo form. Bit of glue around the tabs at the bottom. Hold those in place. You can see where my right thumb is, there's a bit too much glue and it's kind of like oozing out the side. So you can just go in there with a Q-tip or something and tidy it up. And the last thing to do is just do all those last little bits of tabs that run around where the rear 3/4 guard is going to go. So the rest of the pillars that run from the top of the roof down to the front of the car, or like the A pillars I think they're called, they have their own outer bodywork as well. That piece sits on there with tabs as usual. Bit of glue, hold it in place, make sure it's all lined up properly. Do the same for each side. Yeah, a bit of glue, pop the piece on. You can see there are some like pieces that I've provided there for it to sit into nicely. You just got to make sure it's lined up properly all the way down and hold it in place till it's dry. So I'm nearly done. I just need to glue on these assemblies that have the side windows attached to them. Just glue the front first, kind of around where my right hand is. Glue that in place, making sure it's all aligned properly and sitting in the right spot. And then do the back, same thing for the back. So a bit of PVA around the bit that it's kind of sits on. Line it up properly, press and hold it for a few minutes, and then yeah, should be good. Do the same thing on each side. The thing to do is to add a thin trim strip that just covers that really kind of messy junction between the bodywork and the side windows. So just a thin bead of super glue. Carefully position the trim strip over that edge, and that just makes it all look really, really neat and tidy. Covers any exposed kind of gluey edges. Just work your way from the back to the front. And there we have it, completed roof for the Gallardo.